where you learn to live, you learn to love, you learn to cry, you learn if you run and you give up, then they hold you down.
Everybody, and welcome back to our Q&A session for the Wingishk International Film Festival. I have the great pleasure of introducing you to Nauzanin Knight, who is the writer-director of my lyric, I Never Knew. Welcome, Nauzanin.
Hi, Phyllis. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Really nice to have you. So powerful film. Thank you for making it. My first was such a dramatic choice for you to use sound design and imagery almost until you hear the piano. When she first starts to sing. How did you make that choice as a filmmaker?
Well, my process for making this film was very different than any other project that I'd undertaken. This film was actually inspired by a woman that I used to work with when I was a music producer a little while ago, and I was so inspired by her personal story. It's not exactly the same as her story. I've changed many of the details, but I was just so inspired by the way that she could deal with some of the more difficult situations in her past using music, using lyrics, and this movie was really inspired by that. And I knew from the beginning that I wanted there to be a final song, and that there shouldn't be any other words that detract from the lyrics. And so I started backwards. I started by writing the lyrics to this song, and then putting together images that would reflect her past and her present. And so that's how that kind of unfolded.
How did you cast the film? What was your casting process for the film?
Actually, casting was also quite different. I approached a friend at the U of A, a friend of my father's at the U of A, Kenneth Williams, and he put me in touch with Tareen. And from there, I just spoke with her over a cup of coffee, and we discussed the story, and it really resonated with her. And so from there, I asked her to send me some of her films so I could see what her work looked like. And I knew right away that she was going to be able to go deep into all, and I didn't even need to audition any further. It was just, we clicked, and her story was so interesting, and I could see that she was going to go to all the places that Sharita had to go.
Mm-hmm. What was the timeline from when you conceived of the idea for the script, the writing of the script, the making of the movie, and then actually locking picture? What was the timeline for that?
Fairly short, actually. I think it was over 4 months, and I started actually by writing the lyrics and then creating a storyboard. I actually didn't write a full out script first. I created the storyboard, and then based on that, wrote the script. And then after that, I actually, interesting story. I wrote this while I was living in Barbados for a few months. And I missed Canada, and I missed the people that I used to work with. And I just had to write this. And when I came back to Canada, immediately after, we went into pre-production and shot the film. So within about 4.5 months, that was the timeline.
And how did you finance the film?
This was actually, it was self-funded. It was a project that I was really passionate about, and I knew that I was going to make it no matter what. And I had a team around me that also many people came out and worked for free for me, and I just thank them from the bottom of my heart, because this film wouldn't have been possible. So all of the crew, they were volunteers on this project, and it wouldn't have happened without them.
So talk a little bit about, because it, certainly memory is a theme, and how do you, what was your process in drawing the importance or the significance of lyrics and expressing yourself musically to then tell the sort of a story within memory within a narrative film?
Well, I think I wanted the memories to emerge sort of as they do in our daily life. Often memories are triggered, especially really powerful memories. They're triggered by the smallest things. So even before the song actually starts, things like her coffee spoon,
Hmm.
and just moments like that that really trigger some of the deepest, most difficult memories for her, or even in an intimate moment with her husband. Very dark, traumatic experience from her past is triggered. So I just wanted to get at how memory is not, it's not always in our control. It's not always working with us, and kind of just wanted to get at those little triggers that could prompt traumatic experiences, for Sharita. And the memory at the end, it's an imagined memory. It's a memory that's just as real to her as anything that happened in her life. And I also wanted to get at that we can recreate images of ourselves, so we can recreate images of our world, to help bolster where we are in the present.
Hmm.
So that was kind of what I was getting at.
How do you find there's a sort of a relatability, and surely Chichu was speaking about it the other day about how in the indigenous community and the Black community and other cultures, there's stories are similar, and cultures are, even that though they're so different, there's a common understanding. How do you find that within your work, and especially relating to this particular film?
As a Baha'i, my religious background is Baha'i, and one of the fundamental teachings is that the earth is but one country and mankind its citizens. And we just believe in the fundamental oneness of humanity, of humankind. And I think, we were hardwired to experience empathy. We have mirror neurons that react when we see other people acting, and when other people speak. We are hardwired to experience that if we just allow ourselves to tap into it. And so I think there are stories that really transcend time and place and culture. And one of my missions, just my company, 1844 Studios, our mission is to really highlight the universality of human experience, um, and and get at those feelings that are universal. I think really transcends culture. But absolutely, I completely agree with you that for Black, Indigenous, people of color, there are really stories that we have all experienced. And I think the more that we can collaborate to share those stories and amplify the voices within our communities, um, then I think we that as a humanity we will be able to understand that there's truly a oneness to all of us, that human experience is one, and that our souls are one, even if our physical beings happen to look different at this time.
Telling women's stories right now it's very powerful, um, to um, to watch women and you know for you as a filmmaker, your voice as a woman, woman filmmaker. As an activist and advocate and all the other work that you do you intentionally bring that to your work as a filmmaker? Or is it organic?
Um,
Or do you start a project and say, okay, this is the message I want to portray, and I'm going to work back from that message?
It's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of both. Definitely in terms of message, I love to tell the stories of women because it hasn't been done before. And we've been playing with one hand tied behind our backs, I feel, in the industry, both behind the camera and in front of the camera. And I can't wait to see a world where we're able to use both of the wings of the bird and really take off. We have to tell the stories of women. It's a matter of continuing to be competitive. It's a matter of growing as an industry. It's a matter of making sure that we're using all sorts of skill sets. And I think that women bring a completely different skill set to the table than men. And I don't know if you find this or if other filmmakers out there find this, but I think sets are just different places when there are women on set. It's a more compassionate place. It's a more understanding place. Um, the the pace is no different. We're still working at the same pace, but it just feels that um, that um, nobody is being left behind. Um, and so I just love the process of working with women and telling the stories of women. And I really would encourage everyone out there who's listening to do the same thing. And so I think to get back to your question, hiring practices, it has to be really intentional. You have to look for women crew. You have to because that's not from the inner circle of the people who have been hired over and over again. So my hiring practices are intentional, but when I write and create, I tend to naturally write the stories of women. Yes.
How what resources did you draw on outside of the your coworker's story that you were saying that it was loosely based on your coworker's story? What other resources did you draw on to find elements of her memory um, while you were articulating sort of her journey to the lyric?
Mm. I think one resource definitely that I drew on was the voice of Kaylee Cardinal, who sings the final song in this film. Uh, I think it's hard to even articulate what I drew from that, but the feeling, the soulfulness of her voice, the way that she just goes so deep in every performance and she's so generous with every performance, I definitely drew on that. And I wanted to work with Kaylee even before she was brought into the project. And so definitely the sound of her voice was something that I drew on. And other resources I really can't emphasize enough. My collaborators, my collaborators, my collaborators. They each brought they each brought so much wealth to the project. And especially have to thank my DPN production designer and my composer, Nick Samuel, who uh, his vision for the sound design combined with sort of my general directions that I gave him, it really became impressive. So I think for the audio, I really drew a lot from audio imagery as well as yeah.
No, that actually leads me right to right here. I have sound design, and I have your cinematographer. So, how did you collaborate on the visual language of the film? It's very
Um,
beautiful.
yeah. Well, Chase is such an experienced cinematographer in the city. Um, I met him by chance, and I had already some reference photos. So I tend to communicate with reference photos. I find it's easier to communicate with visual people like that. And so just kind of we were working off of those, and I also kind of communicated the these different worlds that we had to go back and forth between, you know, as she's flashing back to the other world, to the her previous life, and she's flashing forward to her present. But then there's also this imagined world that comes together during the concert of her
Mhm.
daughter. And so I really worked with him to create these three distinct looks um, that we needed to be able to communicate without words. So the audience just gets it. So we created these three different worlds with different, um, that just give you a different feeling visually.
And did you work with the composer while you were shooting, or was that something you found in the edit process?
To create the final song, we actually we created the song first, and I knew that we were going to draw from the chords and the arrangement of the final song throughout. So there was just that understanding. But then actually, after the film was shot, then we really dug into it and really tried to understand the rhythms and the beats and different moments that he would need to articulate with the music. And so that's how we found it, a little bit before, a little bit after.
And your editor. So how did you collaborate in post with your editor, or was your editor working? Did you start cutting as you were shooting, or did you shoot the film out and then start the editing process?
Well, actually, I had this time we had the editor on set throughout. I just wanted him to be there because I knew that um, he would he really needs to understand the feelings and the emotions that went into each shot to get where and the rhythm. I think just rhythm. It's that's something that's also very hard to articulate unless the editor is on set. And so the editor was on set throughout, and I found that that really helped with the editing process later on.
And after you finished, what have you like the film? Has the film been festivaling a lot? Like, what's the end use? Do you have a where can people see the film?
Yes. Well, it's a bittersweet moment because this is the last of the festivals in our circuit. We were really fortunate to and very humbled that our film got to play at the American Indian Film Festival, at the Dream Speakers Film Festival, and NSI's Online Film Festival. And now, with this final festival, the film is at its home on CBC Gem. So you can also find the film there.
Is it streaming on Gem now?
It is, yes, it's now available on Gem. And the song is also available if you're looking for that on different streaming platforms and on iTunes.
Oh, that's great. So what's your next project?
Well, I'm working on a few things. On the doc side, I'm working on a story about female suicide bombers in Nigeria. And these were women who were abducted very young, and trained and sent out on deadly missions and escaped. They escaped the insurgency. So that's one of the projects that sort of earlier on in development, I'm working on that. And I also just wrote a feature film set in the time of COVID. And so that's something that I'm looking to do as production opens up again.
And so just for, new filmmakers and audience members, um, how do you where would you if when you finish your film or your script, where then would you take it to try and get financing?
I There's definitely different ways to it. There's a traditional sort of grant financing route that you can take for indie films, but I'm learning more and more that, and kind of learning from the American model in this sense, is that there are a lot of organizations and individuals and nonprofits even that they might align with the subject matter of your film, and they're really great allies, whether they financially support the film or offer some contributions in kind. They're very good allies for your film, and that's another route that you can take if you're not successful with the grant financing. I mean, you can also do a route where kind of all of your friends are working together on the project. And you know, in Edmonton, we have an altruistic community, and we tend to we do work often for each other for free and return the favor later on. And it really does contribute to the community's health and well-being, I think. But it's a great way to make your projects if you're starting out, just having friends that you can draw on.
And what is it about filmmaking? What attracts you to filmmaking, to the genre, both to documentary and then to narrative films?
For me, I don't have my background was actually in crime science and in psychology, so I definitely came into this a bit later in my life, but I knew that I loved writing stories, and I felt that film is just a way, it's a more powerful medium than anything else that I've ever worked in. I've done music, I've done writing, I've done academia, and nothing reaches people's hearts like film. That's what really drew me to this. And I think, not only is it entertaining for audiences, it's also a way to convey messages that could potentially change the world. And when I think of some of the films that inspired me, they were entertaining, they had high production value maybe, but the messages just they changed my heart. They changed the way that I see the world, and that's what I wanted to get into. That's what I wanted to do with my life.
How much of yourself do you bring to, say, the character in Lyric I Never Knew, My Lyric I Never Knew? How much of yourself do you allow into the characters that you write?
Whenever I write, I always feel like I'm embodying the character. So I don't feel that I don't feel that it's myself. It's myself stripped of all of my own personal traits and just living in the body of that character. And so, I mean, I guess method actors experience that all the time, and I kind of feel like it's a method writing for me. So I kind of just go into the body of that person and live in that world, and experience, if there's dialogue, I experience that myself. And it's hard sometimes. It's hard when your character goes a dark place. But I just feel that that's been my writing process from the beginning, and it works for me because I can truly, again, going back to empathy that I mentioned, I can truly empathize with that that person that I'm bringing into the world, or that I'm inspired to bring into the world, because it doesn't always necessarily feel that the writing is coming from you either. It feels like you're being inspired to channel something onto a page.
Well, what was quite extraordinary about the film, and I was saying this yesterday, it was another short film, that what we forget often as creators and writers and directors is that it doesn't necessarily have to take 90 minutes to tell a complete story. And you know, was it hard to condense this sort of very big narrative into 10 minutes, or did it feel like exactly the perfect length?
I felt that if it's possible, I should do it. I felt that if you can be succinct, ultimately the message will be more powerful at the end. And that's why I felt like I needed to condense it. And you don't, I felt that you don't really need to you don't need to show everything that unfolds in that long period of time to get the message. So that's why I felt that a shorter format would work for this story. And it was challenging, but because I started with images as opposed to, writing out the full script, that helped me keep the project as succinct as possible.
So when you were writing your script, each image was its own scene. Like
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, each image already was locked down as an image before I even started to write it.
And how many days did you shoot?
We shot for 4 days.
And did you have full crew for those 4 days?
Except for the last day, which was an easier shoot. We had full crew for the other days. Yes.
So the power of music, we only have a couple of minutes left. Talk about the impact that music can have on all of us and the impact of song and lyrics in your film.
Well, I really believe that music it's another language, and it uplifts the soul in a way that almost nothing else can do. You can disappear into the world of music. You can be one with the notes. You can and voice in particular, the way that soulful voices kind of resonate in your body and resonate with your mind. I find it's it's something that I couldn't have done with dialogue. I couldn't have I couldn't have conveyed what Kaylee Cardinal's voice conveys with dialogue. So uh, I think that was really what uh, the song was the centerpiece of this film. And yes.
We only have a little bit under a minute left, but if there was anything that you would want, or that your hope for what we take away from your film, what would it be?
I think um, I want to talk about behind the scenes actually, and just say that consultation, collaboration, having a spirit of humility on set, um, working with people from diverse groups. That's actually what I would say was I would love for people to take away from this film, because it changes the process. I think people can feel it in the outcome as well. Yeah.
And for women, young women that are in a place of struggle and have aspirations and hope, how do you see your film as part of that conversation?
I really do hope it encourages those women to pick up a pen, or to pick up a guitar, or to pick up a camera, whatever it is that helps you to amplify your own voice and communicate your own voice. Please do that. It makes a difference. And now the film community is really listening. They're starting to listen, and they're starting to look to hire people from different backgrounds, and they're seeing unique stories as bringing a unique value. So that's what I would say. Just pick up a pen.
Well, your film was really beautiful and riveting, and I want to thank you very much for joining us. And I hope everybody has an opportunity to see the film while the festival is still running, and you can go to CBC Gem to see it streaming. And Nauzanin, it was really a pleasure meeting you, and look forward to your doc, and look forward to your new feature film.
Thank you. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, take care.
where we plant